Welcome to my presentation of mass migration Oracle Forms to Apex. And I've been doing that using QAFE, which is a product that is developed by our company. First of all, I must excuse myself for my German presenters, my German hosts. I have been working with my colleagues, with the temporary colleagues of MT-AG, and they have done a wonderful job of brushing up my German, but it's not geschäftsfähig yet. So I have to do it in English. I'm sorry. I will briefly introduce myself. I call myself a database developer. I have been that from about 1983. Currently, I am employed by Qualogy, which is a company in the Netherlands. I graduated from the University of Twente, which gave me the title of Engineer Technische Bedrijfskunde, Informatiekunde. And I've tried to translate that using Google Translate, and it translates, in my opinion, the best to the German word Betriebswissenschaft. Since business administration, the English term for it is somehow has a connotation of doing the bookkeeping in the number, which is not what I was doing in the study. I've been working since my study at the university with Oracle database, version 4.1.4.1. I think, well, I tell everybody that I have had the first AT computer, 286 Intel computer, with 4 megabytes of memory. It was a giant card with all those black boxes in there. And I could run reasonably well an Oracle database. For the rest of my career, until now, I've been in different roles. At the moment, I say I'm an Apex specialist, but it has also been a time that I said I was a form specialist or a database designer, developer. I've worked in roles where I was called programmer, project lead, architect, or something. But in the end, it came down to developing databases. You might also have seen from other presentations from Dutch presenters that we like to show our efforts to get the personnel at Starbucks pronounce our name right and write it down correctly on the cup. This was one try of me. I'm not sure what he tried to do. I know I make a joke sometimes by telling the same name as the guy before and making a mix-up at the end of the line. So maybe he saw through that and say, okay, you're the same as the one before. I'm not sure. And at this one, it was very early in the morning, and I forgot that you have to tell my name. So as soon as I said my order, I want a large cappuccino, and he said, what's your name? I went, ooh, and oh, sorry, I'm Wouter. And by the time I was at the end line, it said Chewbacca. So they promised to make your day. These are the days that they were made by Starbucks. Okay, please be so kind to value my presentation at the end. I will show this slide up again by then. I must say, I am about to disappoint you. This is probably the most disappointing presentation in the whole Apex Connect range. First of all, I'm going to tell you the outcome of my presentation before I started it. And the story will be, don't do something with an automated tool, which is obviously for all those tool-minded guys like us, really relatively disappointing conclusion. What I do say is, if you want to migrate, please embark yourself on a journey, prepare yourself for a large quantity of work. Yes, you will use tools, but it won't go all by itself. And, which is very clear for a business, please only migrate if there is a sound business case. So clearly take some time and effort to make this business case. Of course, there's not a client who will invite you to his office and say, well, go ahead and I'll see if you pay. And on the other hand, no account manager will let you ever go to a client that has not signed a contract. Okay, if that's a conclusion, why should you migrate at all? Well, I have found some reasons which set off clients to start a migration journey. And although I have labeled it with research, I don't think it is really scientific, but those are insights from my experience, and you can do with it whatever you like. But I think the numbers that are under there should be taken with a grain of salt, because the population is quite small. I've come up with several reasons from CTOs and CIOs for starting a migration project. And I've also found several reasons why I particularly do not like automated migration tools. And I will sum them up for you too. Is there a solution then? Yes, there is a solution somehow. I can tell you how I do it manually. It's not that different from a normal project, but you got some nice hooks in the existing system which you can use to make your life easier. And I do that most often by referring to a case that I just rounded up with Exterior Media in Amsterdam. And I will tell you, of course, what company that is. Let's start with a tiny survey. It's also a Dutch tradition to have a presentation with a survey. I'm quite binary, so I will try to divide the audience into two parts. I think I want to separate you in colleagues and clients. Let's do this by hand raising. Are you one of my colleagues? If you build IT systems, either at an IT company or in an IT department of an end-user firm, in the role of a programmer, a designer, architect, or DBA or something, please raise your hand then. Which lots of them. Okay. Okay, that's less than I hoped for, but certainly more than expected. You are a customer if you let others build IT systems for you, either by an IT company or your own IT department. So you have to get in the manager of the IT department and tell them what you want. Is there anybody who is in this role? You hire me or my colleagues for building IT systems. Nobody? No, you're scratching your head just. Okay. Well, I was going to say thank you for providing us with all the work that you have for us and all those amounts of trust that you place in our hands. Because this week, preparing this, it came to me that our job is not unlike a dentist from the customer point of view. When the customer decides to hire us and say, well, do your magic, then he has a great chance of getting hurt by us. There's a great chance that at the end, that when we're finished, he is not completely satisfied with the job, but we will send him a big bill anyway. So I think there's a slight similarity. So again, I want to thank everybody who is a customer for providing us with all of the work. Now, why do I need this? In my story, there was several years ago, I don't know, I told you I came from management science. So I was taught that everything you do starts with the business case. And for some stupid reason, it got lost looking for migration projects. I just went out with this story. I talked with my colleagues and with my manager, said, let's see, we built hundreds of thousands of forms in the last 20 years, maybe millions in Europe. There must be a bunch of candidates ready for migration to new applications, whether it be ADF or HTML or please Apex, because we're very fast. So we started out as a first step by just canvassing clients. Some of them were old clients from us, where we already did something, and some of them were clients where we knew they had forms implementation. And we went in there with a fiery story about Apex is super light, you should transfer it, migrate it, or rebuild, or it is free. All the knowledge that you have will be retained in the database, so we can just place a shell over it. all the nice things of Apex. And you would think, after such a fiery story, the clients would be jumping on the table and say, yes, come in, please migrate our application. But what happened was something else. Customers were not at all enthusiastic. Most of the time they were going, yeah, well, it has been running for years, and we're a little bit worried that you are going to break more than you were doing good for the application, so leave it alone. It works, it's robust, leave it. And every now and then there was a client that had a very valid question. Okay, suppose that I would let you migrate my application, what does it cost? And at that moment, and it took me several times to realize, I had no answer. I was there with my mouth full of teeth, not saying anything. And of course, it's correct. It's all about the business case. You have to find a reason for doing the change to a system. Now, this is earlier. After several times, we started to improve on that, and we found several clients that were willing or already undertaking migrations in their systems. And we had them mark up which were the compelling reasons to change the system. You see 4 categories where we combined everything, and we have 30 answers to divide. Mind you, that's not exactly the 30 or the 29 from the beginning, because the data set from companies is different than the one we canvassed. So much for anything that you can say about scientific correctness. But let's try to go in the spirit of Maurice de Hond, which is a famous Dutch statistician. He always says, try to estimate, try to guess beforehand how much answers do you have. Which one of those do you think the biggest reason, the one that gets called most by the clients? It's free. Okay, possible. Other ideas? End of life. Okay. That was my idea also. They should know by now that although Oracle has presented the statement of direction in 2007 telling that they will be alive till 2017, there was no development planned. So that was terrifying. I wouldn't go for a company selling cars or microwaves or washing machines that would say, well, we're not doing any development. Let's leave it as it is. Let's show you the answers. Again, nothing scientific about this. Only one client was scared enough by us to say, okay, we have to do something about the end of lifetime. 5 times, which was quite startling to me. 5 times it was, okay, we are Dutch, that is of course one reason to do it, but I would always have thought that there was an extra reason for having a system migrate to something else. Otherwise you could better throw it away. It's even cheaper. Most of the times was enhanced functionality, and the difference between enhanced functionality and new functionality, in my case, is that when somebody does not change the basic process of the application, then it's enhanced functionality. So there are comment fields that are 40 characters wide, and the customer wants it 70 characters, or instead of maximum of 3 records per client, you want 7 records per client. That's not really extending the functionality in the sense that the process has changed. New functionality is everything that a customer says, okay, I want an Apex application because my business process has changed. I have to do my work differently. And that was, okay, quite astonishing to me that apparently there were a lot of business processes that can last a very long time. And the information systems that you build for that will also last a very long time. Knowing that, after several years, now we are in almost the present, we formulated our steps when we do our migrations. First of all, every project that you start, you have to make an estimation. The client always asks you, listen, I want to have this, what does it cost me? And then you go in a study, sometimes paid, sometimes not, and you will make an estimation on the basis of what they write up in a document. Most of the time, that is pretty crappy stuff by the time you get to build it. And that means that your estimation of how many hours it will take is also very crappy. Thank goodness, if you do not do it by Prince2, but if you have a sound Scrum or Agile development method, you will be able, if the client understands it, you will be able to adjust the path and not waste any money building stuff that the customer doesn't need. And in the worst case, you come to the conclusion in an early stage that the customer says, well, let's stop it all, let's not waste money on a path that I cannot use anyway. We found at migration that there's a lot of similarity with normal projects, but there are 3 phases. First is the discovery phase. That is the phase where you end up with a customer lead for some reason, and you can discuss with the CTO, with the lead users about what they want and what they need. Most of the time you have about 4 hours, that is 1 hour discussion with the customer. Then the director or the technical guy leaves and you are stuck with the DBA and the end user. And you can poke their minds for about 3 hours with what do you want with your system. We use that step to create, in those 4 hours, preliminary offer, something about you can expect a project of about this size. Because the customer wants to know, are we talking about 20,000 euros or 200,000 euros? Are you using 12 weeks to build it or 24 weeks to build it? And you will need information for that, and that's the discovery step where I will come to further detail for that. The next step is the really tricky stuff, because after the discovery step, my account manager leaves. And he says, Wouter, just fix it. Just write something up, and that means that the estimation that is there is resulting is my work. And if we finally embark on the journey with the client and come to the end, and it has taken a lot more time, which is probably halfway that when the money is all gone, or at the end of the project, nothing is finished, they will say, your estimation was wrong. So, we have to do that very good. And now is something very nice. We have an existing system that we have to, most of the time, mimic for several stuff. And one of the biggest things that you have to figure out while building a system is what are the business rules governing the system? Well, when the system is already existing, they are somewhere in there, hopefully. Now, let's get them out. And that is what this step is about. Then you have a right basis on which to form your estimation of the different screens and the pages that you want. And then you have a sizing of your project, which is pretty sound. I will show you. The third step, building it, yeah, I will not get into that. That's way beyond the scope of this presentation. But I will only tell you that I'm a vivid user of Jira. I put all the work that I can find in there, either with a subsystem as an epic or with a subsystem as a complete project, depending on how much they are interacting, how much you think they should be connected to each other. And I use very like to use SQL Developer Data Modeler for not only storing the data model, but also to generate with the transformation scripts all the stuff that I want to put in the database, like indexes, a reset script for the indexes, and so on. And subversion for the rest of the code that we produce. Right, the first step, bear in mind that's only 4 hours that you have. I must always emphasize that I must not elaborate too much about what we find in the database. The first step is just opening or letting the DBA open SQL data modeler and import the data model. Just to get a glance of what they're telling me that the system is about. And then you get, within the first hour, you get an idea of, okay, this is going to be a nice project or this is a disaster. Now, here are 3 of the disaster hints. You find 50% of the tables are named like _old, or all objects are in one schema. So there's a database with default Oracle schemas and then another schema with all the data in there and everything. And you find dead code tables. That is, you can see that the tables haven't been touched for several years, but still contain data. And you can ask the users about what's in the table, what kind of data is there, and why isn't it? Oh, that's a part of the system we don't use anymore. It's an old telephone system. Why is it there? If you have that, you know that the database is a mess, and you know that the processes, so the company, is making a mess of it, or at least is not trying to correct the mess that is in the database. You will have considerably more effort need to clean that up than in the environment where it is nice, where you see every system in its own schema or several schemas with a nice naming standard with all stuff in place. At this point, this is enough for me. I can get my first taste of the data model. I only have 4 hours, bear in mind. Next thing I do is I ask for the source code. Okay, you have several FMX files running in the system. Show me the FMB files. And I check for a certain part if the FMB file is matching with the FMX file, just recompiling it and looking if it's running in the same time, looking if it's about the same size and about the same stuff. You would not believe the times that I have an FMB file that is not matching the FMX. Also crap if that happens. And you have to find some kind of process description because the database is a static representation of what is happening. It is not telling you, after you fill in this, then you must do that. And the business process is nowhere near the system. You have to find somebody or something that describes that for you, all in 4 hours. So if you have the chance, of course there are users, please talk to the users and let them explain to you what the system is supposed to do. Everything in these 4 hours is geared, is focused upon understanding what you do, what the customer asks of you. Maybe you don't have that, but I have been in several projects where after 2, 3, 4, 5 days, you are, what is he asking you? And it turns out that you're doing something quite differently from what he asks. And maybe you should be lucky that you find out after 5 days and not after 5 weeks. But better start early, checking if you really understand what they mean. Maybe you can even find different subsystems. The customer always thinks of his process as a complete part, but sometimes it's better to subdivide it in smaller pieces. Okay, after this discovery phase, I am able to write down, most of the time, a nice quote for the customer. And at that moment, the customer says, okay, let's go in business with each other. There's some kind of agreement, there's some kind of way that we're going to build a system for him, but always with in mind, we have to do a detailed estimation of what we're going to build. I want to be absolutely sure that we have the best setup when starting. Even if you're doing an Agile Scrum development, you do not start blindfolded building something. You do not start building a house when somebody wants a swimming pool or something. You make sure that you're as good as this. And since you are working in an existing system, you can use that as an example, of course. So that will help you in the right direction. You might have noticed me grinning this morning while Lynn Bruin was giving a speech, because he is a great advocate of a thick database like Toon Koppelaars. I'm only not a member of the oak table, but I really do think that you should leave the database, do all the validation, and so no client can ever mess up your data. So I will take a great deal of my time for looking if there's anything wrong in the data model. And I must say, we, our colleagues, we can make a mess of stuff by clients. I work with Qualogy, and we get calls from the ministries and companies, and you always get the work of somebody else from another company. And I must say, sometimes it is really messy what the guy before you did. And the trouble is, you are not always in the situation that you will say, okay, I will clean it up first, because cleaning it up will also take several months. So you probably add your part of the mess to the mess that's already there, which is not nice. But I will warn the customer if this situation is in place, and I will go looking, are the primary keys there? You will know that Apex will have some trouble with primary keys that are made up of more than 2 attributes. So better have a nice, clean data model with surrogate keys in there, and the correct foreign keys. Make a sidestep to exterior media. We found a data model over there, which was clearly like a tree built with year rings. You could see the core system that was built, and the stuff was built around it. And that meant that a part of the tables was nicely with foreign keys and primary keys. Another part did not have primary keys and foreign keys. And another part had foreign keys with cascading delete on. Now, I'm not a particularly advocate of that, but I think it is particularly wrong to have one part of your data model with cascading deletes and the other part not. It is the more so wrong if nobody knows that it is like that. You might just thump over it, stumble over it, and just crash the database. It's not great. Okay, after that, I will take at least a day for that. I will map all the stuff in there, and they go in a special savings box with extra time. Every time I miss a primary key, I will try to get the customer, well, let me repair that for you before we start working, because it will hurt us if we leave it in there. And sometimes the customer goes for it and says, okay, clean up my data model, clean up the resulting difficulties in the forms. And sometimes we might be able to, sometimes we might not. And then I start working with the rest of the case. The biggest, well, over there. The biggest part of what the system is going to be in the packages, the triggers, the FMB files, maybe some PLL files, programmer language. And I have been using QAFE to entangle that for me. We found that for the first project I ever did, oh, by the way, I only had 2 customers ever coming over to me and say, hey, please come over and transform my forms to Apex. All the other migrations I did were started from a project where you start building, it grows, and then some functionality trickles over, and you start to take some forms over, and then somebody at the end says, yeah, well, that's no way of looking at it. It has no smooth, it has no face. Let's do the rest also, because it doesn't look nice. Or let's do this also. I don't like to have a part of my work here and then have to log in here again. So sometimes it trickles over. Only 2 customers ever asked me, come over here and migrate. I will show you in a minute how I used QAFE for entangling all the data. After that, I know this page, this form that's here, is it simple, is it normal, or is it complex? And I label them, and when I'm done and I have a sufficiently large number of forms, I have a pretty good estimation of how many hours I am busy. Now, you can believe me on my blue eyes for that, but our customer didn't and said, well, make a proof of concept and prove that you really estimate it correctly like this. So I will show you. The main goal is telling the customer, we are going to do this project in so many hours. And I take that from Jira because I put all the pages in Jira, describe what I'm going to do with them, and have an estimation of time over there. And of course, I don't do that on my own. I have my colleagues come over and say, well, look at this. What do you think of this procedure? What do you think of this package? Should we do it like this? And is this a complex part or is it a simple part? Well, I told you I used QAFE. QAFE is a project which is started by the Java department of our company. And it is an open source tool. It is consisting of several parts, and one of the parts is a FMB wizard. And the FMB wizard analyzes the FMB file, takes it apart, and looks for references in the database, for references in PLL files, and takes out the triggers. They even gone further because they said, well, if we have done that, then we can build a new application from it. And they showed it to me, and I thought, I can do better. And the application works in new ADF. I don't like ADF, I don't understand it, it's much too complex for me, and I can see where all the code is, but it looks like a labyrinth to me, instead of a clear-cut Apex application. So I don't like it. And the same goes for the HTML5, which is much better, even though they're rebuilding it for HTML5 using Polymer. So probably if you call up the website, you can see references to the Polymer. They're doing it for a customer now, and it will eventually land here. So they presented their tool to me. They had several pieces converted, and they said, oh, what do you think of it? Well, I didn't like it, of course, because it looked very similar to what you would expect a weak extract from the original. It wasn't nearly as good as Forms was. So if you're going to mimic the Forms, do it in an Apex way, or do it in an HTML5 way, or do it in a real ADF way. It didn't look good, it didn't feel good, and the code behind there was just too complex for me. Not for them, they understood it perfectly, but it was too complex for me. And I'm just a developer, and I need simple code. Otherwise, I will make a mess of it. So, are we then on non-speaking terms? No. I was very, very, very happy with the way they extracted the tools, because up until then, for my first customer I had to go in every FMB file to find if there is a place where there was code. Did it use the PLL? Was it correctly linked? How many procedures were there? And as you know, if you have an item trigger in a form on a higher level, it goes for all those lower levels. You don't want to misunderstand where a piece of code is attached to. So you have to be very awake and use a lot of coffee to get it. And there was another part that I will show you. That is the PL/SQL visualization. The first thing I want to know is how much code is there? Just, is it big or is it small? Where is it? Is it in the triggers in the database or in the form? Is it in packages, nicely? Is it in PLL files, or is it in all the other places? And how does it interact with each other? Is there much to find? Now, instead of having to cut and paste every piece of trigger code into a file, it just gets that for me and presents it nicely. I will show that for you. And This is the very best one. You get a live tool from all the triggers and functions in there. Although it doesn't say anything, I will show it live to you within a few seconds. You can see for every dot is a piece of code. It's either a trigger in the form trigger in the FMB, or it's a program unit being called from the form, which is either in the form or in the database. And it gives you, if you have seen 2 or 3 of them, a nice view of, oh, this is a very complex form, or no, this is very simple. Just a question, is this simple or complex? I will show you. No, simple. Thought you would say that. Okay, I will give you a live demo of how this works. And this is actually even boring than the rest of my story. Look at this. I only have to load a file at QAFE. Let's really live this. If I wasn't sweating already, I would start now. You know how that works with live presentations. Now, there's telling me that I have still 20 credits left. I can upload a form, and I will do that now. Oh. Carefully selecting a form. And it will start to analyze a file called d_domain.fmb. First it will upload, and it will come back with the first part of the analysis, say, well, your coordinate system is not correctly. So I will use a non-pixel coordinate system. And there it is. It's got uploaded. The first part of analysis is already finished now. It has established that this FMB file is valid. It is form 6i or higher. It is complete, and it has read it from start to end. Now, let's do the conversion now, which is also pretty boring. Oh no, there's a nice color-changing circle over there. It is not monstrally fast on the website, but if you have it locally, it is much faster, of course. So, but even then, it will take only a few seconds to make a simple application. Now, I will not show you PL SQL code directly. I will first show you the visualization, which is over here. And you can see that every dot stands for one of the triggers in the form with actual code, and this is a part where the trigger asks for a specific procedure. Of course, I ask for them. Make it so that I can click this, and it will open the code so I can directly see it. And please make it so that I can do that afterwards, not only if I stopped or finished the conversion, but I would like to recall this graph in the end. But don't worry. There is a nice HTML file in the stuff that he calls it. He has created a list of all the triggers with the original code. And I can go over here and check out what is in there. How much code is there in there to be written, and how much of this code is actually for navigation in the form. And there's a quality check that you have to. Yes, you have to know forms, and you have to know PL SQL, but I know several times some of my colleagues have written forms with navigation and business code intermingled. And that hurts if you start. I just got a signal from the referee. 39 minutes, thank you. I just go down, look at all the code, and within 2 or 3 hours, I can do about 20 forms. And I can come back with you with an estimation of, is this a simple, a normal, or a complex view? Back from the demo. Next step being, after the last step of estimation, is for every page, for every form that I found, I will think up of how it will look in Apex. If you have a simple form is in forms normally a select, insert, update, and delete form. And that will, most of the time, be translated to a list with a coupled form. So I can estimate how many hours I take for that, and I will set that in. And I do it like this. If I have a master data page, which is just a domain table with business values, I can build that within 4 hours. And it will list a form table. It will select, insert, update, and probably delete, because most of the time deletes are just a checkbox telling this is not a valid record anymore. And if you have a normal page that is probably with multiple tables and views in there manipulating data, and everything else is complex. And what I want to do, of course, which is very, very tricky for me, because I tend to undersize an application. I always tend to say, that's simple, that's nice. But that's really, really dangerous, because some of them will take considerably more time than others. There are tables that, pages that will take at least 2 or 3 days. So you will need to have some table pages estimated at 4 hours that will take only 2 or less. One of the things I found in our last project, which is not a conversion project at all, but if you ever get a chance to talk to one of the guys at MTRG, we used the Standardanwendung, and they have a way of telling Apex to generate those standard pages for you. And in the project we did that. We had all standard pages, and none of the pages in the eventual product were exactly like the generator made them. So the generator is crap, but it saved us so much time just typing in the stuff. Eventually we had changed every page that was made by the standard application, but it saved us a lot of time. So using that and those kind of tools, I am able to say that I can take back for simple forms from 4 hours to 2 or 3 hours in several cases. Now, after that, I can go back to my client and say, this is the estimation, I will build it for you. And then from that moment, it's a normal project. I will just ravel along, getting the red card, why I don't like automated tools. It's very simple. Along the way, from back in 2008 until a year ago, we have looked at all different kinds of automated tools. And one thing we find out, I will not go about telling how bad those tools are and how they're called. You can find it for yourself, or I will whisper it in your ear. And then you can find it for yourself after you have a trial license and find out that it's what. They are very stubborn in their translation. If you have a form, it will be translated to a tabular form instead of a form and a list, or the other way around. You cannot choose. If you have a master detail, it stays a master detail, even when it's better to have a list and a context and another list. The hit ratio of the forms is, for the code, is call me a number. It's not 100%. I need 100%. If it's not 100%, I will never trust the tool, so I will always open up the tool and try to look what's in there. So eventually, I will turn up using it manually, or at least checking all the code that is made. The code is often wrapped in the sense that it is encapsulated in another procedure. So if you have a procedure in a database that is called by the FMP, it will stay there, but it will be called from another procedure. And that is not a problem for the database. It's not a problem for the performance. It's a problem for the one that does the maintenance, because he has to wade through all the calls and understand that. That's the problem, not the performance. And that adds to unnecessary complexity. And last but not least, most of the tools are pretty expensive. Up to 25,000 euros per user, per system. As I said, we started out our journey with exterior media, and I will tell you what we did. We built an application for them. We had an experts meeting at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and one of the questions that went around was, how do the new users like the interface? Well, with exterior media, they originally asked us, please convert it. And then we said, yeah, this is not a conversion, this is a new part of a new system. So let's build a new system for you and have them simultaneously in working order. And we'll take up your order system later. So we built this system. And everybody was very happy with the interface. So nobody complained. It was like buying your shoes at Zalando instead of using Forms. So every user was happy with it. So the question for us in this project, did the users accept the new interface? Yes, no problem at all. In fact, the current Forms users are pulling our jacket, please, make haste, we also want a new interface. I will go to the definitive order. There was a total of 600 pages that we had to convert, that are in their possession, 43 of which are from the order system. And since I don't think it's a good idea to start a system that big, I made several cuts, and we brought it back to the order application of 43. And from those 43, we made, for the customer, free proof of concept. And we did 12 forms. And now the best one, I estimated the work of that, and we built the forms, and we came out that we used 10% less time than we had originally estimated. So I really tried to make a conservative estimation, and that was good that I did it. One thing's in favor in this system, every system is different, but one thing in favor was that all the logic that was present, all the business logic was only in the forms. So there was no interaction between database procedures and forms. If there was something done and checked, it was in the form. And that helped in this case, because every form really quickly revealed the secrets by just running QAFE over it and looking at the code. Okay, what's the biggest conclusion? Using QAFE will speed up your estimation process tremendously. Instead of hours, hours per form, I was using only minutes per form. So I was able to do an estimation in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. And some kind of life lesson. We already found out, like Bryn Llewellyn told us, there is no cost saving in leaving a bad data model. Please, please convince your customer that a bad data model will always bite you in the tail eventually. And we found out already by just building the quoting system, even before starting the POC. Okay, thank you for your attention. That's my part of the story. You can reach me if you have any questions at LinkedIn, at Twitter, or just by normal email. And please leave a comment at the app built by MTAG. Thank you.